boxing.
Beats and rhymes.
No one can do it better.
Shigetoshi Kotari, 8 wins, 5 knockouts, 2 losses, 2 draws. He lost a split decision to Yamato Hata at the Karoken Hall, Japan, 2nd of August, 2025. He died from injuries sustained from his fight with Yamato Hata. That was at Super Feather. On the same card, Hiromasa Yorikawa, a lightweight, 10 wins, 7 inside the distance, 4 losses. He was stopped in the 8th by Yoji Saito on the same card. The super featherweight, Shigetoshi Kotari, had emergency brain surgery to treat a subdural hematoma, but he couldn't be saved. The lightweight, Yorikawa, he died from a brain injury on the same event. Now, I guess what is an uncomfortable topic for us to talk about is both of them dying on the same card. Not sure if that's happened before or been documented in modern history. John Cooney, an Irishman, he passed away in February following a fight in Belfast. He was 28, intracranial hemorrhaging after losing to Nathan Howells. Now, the Japan Boxing Commission announced all Oriental and Pacific Boxing Federation title bouts will be reduced to 10 rounds from 12. Chris Algieri on the ProBox channel introduced this to the topic: how intense the sparring is over there. Paulie Malignaggi replied, I said, we spar hard over here. Algieri replied, it's different. The Japanese fighters don't implement as much defense. They're having full-scale wars in the sparring sessions. Also,
they're probably keeping their guys on weight much longer than we see Western fighters. So, 2 weeks out, they want we want you to be on weight. I want you training at weight, which is a very old school mentality. I think it's very, very dangerous. You're whittling guys down, keeping them in a dehydrated state.
If all these factors check out, reducing the fights to 10 rounds will not make it safer for the Japanese pugilists. But we're going to tread lightly due to the severity of the topic. A month or so ago, I did a fight report on Brian Norman Jr. defending his WBO 147-pound belt against Jin Sasaki. Now, in hindsight, some of it may sound insensitive, but this was my take on the fight and Japanese boxers.
No one can do it better.
Yeah, the writing was on the wall. As soon as the contest started, Jin Sasaki, for a wild right hand that was never going to get near the target. It was so wild, the punch actually landed back on Jin's torso. And all through the fight, he had trouble with the shots that landed on the head. Sasaki, though, somewhat undeterred, was determined to push Norman on his back foot, as he caught Norman's attention with a good left hook to the head and landed some good body shots, and there was some good moments. But, Norman content to counter punch, not in no real hurry. He knew all the missiles belonged to him, so he didn't really have to launch everything at once. He came back with his own harder combinations just to let Sasaki know, yo, I'm in charge here. By the third, you would have thought Sasaki's cornerman would have been a bit more concerned about the amount of stick he was taking. I mean, there were some hard right hands and left hooks, and he wasn't trying to move his head, wasn't trying to use any range control at all. Now, I guess because he's got a high knockout percentage, he did the best he could with what he knew how to do. But he was getting rocked and staggered by single shots and combinations. But it was relatively rudimentary and primitive what Sasaki was doing. He'd launch spectacular looking big shots, fall off balance, then pull back with his hands down, and he was blowing hard at this stage. I mean, he's really turning over these power punches, and they're landing flush. In the 5th, Jin wouldn't give in. He wouldn't give in. Norman jabbed to the body. Then as he was moving to his left, he coiled into this left hook. Same type of punch that Sam Peter caught Jeremy Williams with back in the day. Same result as well. Devastating knockout. This guy was slept. The Japanese gene pool of fighters, like for every 2 Juntos, Inoues, throwing the Tarajis, and there's a few more, there's a lot of Sasakis and Mishiros who fought Andy Cruz on Saturday, who don't have a clue or interest in blocking slipping punches. They don't have an interest in it. Just walking on to shots from a power puncher. There was no technical preparation for this fight. And if there was, it didn't show. They just got him fit and strong. Just throw punches, and hopefully overwhelm Brian Norman Jr. When he ended it in the 5th, and he threw the probing jab to the body, what would you think, he was putting up a flower display? No, that's to set him up with something up top to the head. But he doesn't play chess. This is supposed to be world championship boxing. No doubt we're going to develop a culture of kids who can't read when they're getting set up with a probing jab to the body, who will get caught with a huge left hook, and then next 10 seconds then get caught again by the same punch. Because all they're looking to do is land their own punches. And if I'm watching a world title fight, and one of you isn't even trying to implement defense in what you're doing, well, what separates you from someone down at the pub going in there and having a row?
Sasaki left the ring on a stretcher, but is said to be in a stable condition.
KO of the year, aesthetic execution, yeah, it probably is. But, I don't want to drag up the Tom and Jerry thing. But if that's KO of the year, and we're not going to take into consideration how limited the opposition was, it just strengthens my point about balance. Exciting fights is not what all boxing is about, or knockouts is not what it's all about. It's about who you knock out. It's about who you're exciting and effective against in terms of win to loss ratio. Being exciting or maybe scoring the knockout of the year doesn't mean you're the best fighter. It really doesn't. And boxing has to ask itself that question. What's more important? Deciding who the best fighter is regardless of what their style is, or just opt for this rock'em sock'em robots thing?
No one can do it better.
Now that's the raw cut. I didn't edit it. I was very frustrated by some of the verbiage surrounding the debate of Tom and Jerry fights. Japan apparently are experiencing more ring fatalities than any other nation.
Why is that?
And I'm still baffled how the science of boxing has been around for so long and evolved, and there's people who still think it's acceptable to tell boxers how they should take excessive risks in the ring. If you don't want to watch their fight, don't watch it. And here's the thing, the counter argument to the pro no Tom and Jerry brigade is not we want to see fighters scared to engage. It's not that. But once you're in that boxing ring, it's just you. You can't bring your crew, your posse, or a gun with you. And if a boxer feels he has to be extra cautious to survive or to win, they're going to do what they have to do. But trying to disarm them from the option of being cautious, even ultra cautious, is irresponsible. We can blackball the guy from the cards. We don't have to invite him back. I agree with that. Reduce the rounds from 12 to 10 in Japan. Then what, 10 to 8? Then what, ban the sport? A more balanced approach is necessary. But Japan, I don't think they can change their culture. The samurai warrior practices seppuku, that's unaliving yourself after losing in combat. Japan employed kamikaze pilots who unalived themselves in aerial combat against the United States. And I wouldn't dream of telling any nation to change who they are endemically. This is who they are. Paulie Malignaggi mentioned that in America and around the world, he often doesn't see oxygen ringside. I don't know if there's any correlation to that and the two tragedies in Japan. They're saying it's a fire hazard, having oxygen, but they have it in England. That amended Muhammad Ali Act was talking about how a UBO will need ambulance provision. I'm thinking, what, that's not compulsory in America? Probably isn't, because whereas in the UK, the British Boxing Board of Control is the main body, and there's a few other fringe contenders, let's say. In America, how many states are there? How many commissions are there with different rules and regulations? And then PEDS. Like, one of the Japanese fighters that passed away was a super featherweight, 5'10". The other one was a lightweight, 5'10". That's tall for them weight limits. And you see, with diuretics and the science of cutting weight illegally, masking agents, etc., is that why we're seeing such tall lightweights, bantamweights? Hey, listen, when Pernell Whitaker was fighting, most of the lightweights were 5'6", 5'7". Yeah, there was exceptions. But now, 5'8", 5'9" is common. 5'10", common. And they're able to boil down them elongated frames into weight classes that, if the science wasn't there, would they be able to? There probably are some sports nutritionists who can help fighters manage their weight clean without illegal means. But then again, there's a lot of boxers cheating. In the West, VADA is the supposed gold standard. What agency was used in this card in Japan? Was there even testing? And that's not throwing shade at the Japanese, but a lot of fight cards around the world, probably the vast majority, there is no testing. And I'm talking in 2025, there is no testing. And if there is, it's very minimal. A lot of the agencies are underfunded, like UCAD. A lot of the promoters are not going to pay for it out of their own pocket either, and neither are the fighters. So the issues with PEDS runs from the small hall promoters, or club promoters as you guys call them across the pond. They go undetected, under the radar. It's not a big headline story when routinely they put cards out and there's no layers of testing at all. Do the government or the British Boxing Board of Control just believe because the small hall promoters either are too stingy or can't afford to do testing that the fighters are just too broke to be able to take PEDS? No. There's a lot of fighters juicing on small hall cards knowing full well they're not going to be tested. You know, there's people tearing down the UBO concept, which is federal law, and Dana and Turkey are going to supposedly use to make their mark in boxing. But at least the UBO comes with a condition that there will be testing. Every card, every fight, testing will be required. Although that in itself doesn't tell us a lot. They should also specify how much testing and how much money is going into the testing, because that determines what level of testing for PEDS you get. And then the big Netflix blockbuster, Crawford versus Canelo. There will be testing, stringent testing, because of the significance of the fight and the standing of the two boxers. So there'll be significant testing. VADA, both fighters, should and would have been tested plenty times before they get in a ring. But it's still a fight shrouded in controversy over PEDS because of the notoriety of Victor Conte and how many fighters have popped who Eddie Reynoso has been associated with in his gym. Canelo himself being one of them tested positive for clenbuterol, and the controversy that followed when the Athletic Commission changed the penalty of the violation to exonerate Canelo. Are we dealing with a losing war testing for PEDS, as we are dealing with a losing war trying to stop the trade and consumption of recreational drugs in everyday life? And it's a losing war through either incompetence or corruption. The more juice the fighter has, in terms if he's connected up with a big promoter connected up with a big network, will determine the outcomes for the guilty parties. Oscar Valdez, he got popped, didn't lose his belt. Bob Arum just switched his next fight under a commission that would turn a blind eye to Oscar Valdez's violation. Job done. The British Boxing Board of Control have finally made dialogue with VADA so they can now recognize VADA's testing process when there's two layers of testing with VADA and UCAD. And their lack of taking the initiative is why you had all these issues with the Conor Benn fight. Nobody from the media is coming out and saying that, because they're either stupid and incompetent, or that just wouldn't get as much headlines as constantly bringing Conor Benn's name up, like they did on TalkSport, for instance, and mainstream media.
Boxing.
Beats and rhymes.
No one can do it better.
Big number. Yeah.
7.7 billion worth of big number in a 7-year deal. So that will take TKO, Dana and Turkey's boxing venture, in the UFC under the Paramount banner. Paramount also plan to take WWE under their banner too.
Take over. The break's over.
Imagine that. Combat sports, from wrestling, boxing to MMA, under one banner for a monthly subscription cost, whatever that is over across the pond. That's going to be very popular. Not just in America either. UFC and WWE have huge fan bases all around the world. Certainly in the United Kingdom. What, no pay-per-view for Royal Rumble or WrestleMania? That's going to be very popular. People complaining about Crawford versus Canelo, Callum Walsh and then Billy on the undercard. They're good fighters. And it's what the undercard should be at the price of subscription. You know, you can talk about the old school or when they had stat cards and whatnot. They weren't dealing with the piracy and illegal streams issue that boxing is dealing with today. I don't think they're directly in competition with DAZN. I think they're more in competition with Netflix. Because I assumed that this TKO venture was going over to Netflix, as Dana promoting Crawford versus Canelo on Netflix was the precursor. Callum Walsh is on the undercard. He's going to be one of the flagship boxers for the TKO brand. Dana's inclusion into the boxing world is not going to be popular. And Turkey's not going to be popular for putting so much power in Dana's hands. Paramount overlooking the old guard, like Top Rank, who have been around for what seems forever. So is that 7.7 for the UFC alone over 7 years? Or does that include TKO? Is that a separate deal? All will be revealed. All will be revealed.
Big number. Yeah.
Boxing.
Beats and rhymes.
No one can do it better.